now. Dr. Henry actually had much to say about what our next phase of this pandemic might look like, and in particular, what it won't look like. Thanks, in no small part, to high vaccination rates in BC. We are not going back to heavy restrictions.
I don't see us having to go back to the same across-the-board restrictions that we had in place even a few months ago in March and April and May. But I do see that it'll be individual level, local things that will have to happen. So if there's transmission in a workplace, that workplace will have to close temporarily in that place. There may be an outbreak in a long-term care home. That we know the measures that we have to take to prevent transmission and to stop outbreaks in long-term care. And we see that every fall. But it's not going to be across the board where we're shutting everything down like before, even if we start to see a surge in more cases, particularly in unvaccinated people.
All right. And Dr. Henry went on to say that there's always been a plan with 3 pillars when it comes to this pandemic. Here she is explaining that.
But we need to go back to the basics, the goals of our pandemic response. One is to prevent morbidity and mortality, so sickness and death. One is to prevent, 2 is to prevent overwhelming of our healthcare system, because we know that affects people with COVID, but also with all the other health needs that people have. And third is to prevent societal disruption. So we're now at that place where most people are protected and, importantly, protected from hospitalization and.
Okay, so with that in mind, many are wondering if proof of vaccination is in our future, even in our day-to-day. Surrey Board of Trade CEO Anita Huberman was with us yesterday on that hot-button topic. Here's what's being asked for by the Surrey Board of Trade.
We need a safe and sustainable way to reopen our economy, and implementing that proof of immunization into different venues, into different businesses, even for a short term, would really enable us to reopen our businesses, to ensure that different places can operate at full capacity. We cannot afford another economic shutdown.
Okay, so yesterday when we opened the phones on that topic, Todd in Langley was our first caller. His position, I must say, was crystal clear.
I'm a business owner, and I'm dead set against it. So, I mean, we were hit hard enough in the last year and a bit. We're finally getting back on track. I can't imagine if I had to then go and deal with customers that are going to get irate because they're asking about this, they don't have it. It would just kill my business.
There are very passionate positions on both sides of this conversation. So many questions about how something like a vaccine passport or proof of immunization in our day-to-day might roll out on a national level, and how businesses, how would they enforce that? To talk it through, we welcome the president of the Canadian Federation of Independent Business, Dan Kelly, back to the program. Hello, Dan.
Good afternoon.
It's good to chat with you. During my conversation with Anita Huberman, I did say, I'm looking back at my young self when I was a hostess at Broadway Earls. Would I have to ask the incoming, diners for their vaccine passports or their proof of immunization? I don't know if I would have felt confident about that. What's your position on businesses needing to sort of police this?
No, look, I share that concern, and I understand that the Board of Trade and many chambers across the country have advocated for some form of vaccine passport. We have some serious reservations at CFIB. I represent 95,000 small and medium-sized companies across Canada, 10,000 of our members in British Columbia. And I got to tell you, they're very reluctant to become the vaccine police.
Yeah.
I understand why businesses are thinking about this. It's good that we're thinking ahead to a potential further outbreak of COVID and what would mean. We all want to avoid a further round of lockdowns or significant business restrictions, and it sounds like Bonnie Henry's aligned to do just that. But I'm not sure that, I understand that public health officials in some areas are thinking that this might be a good idea because it would encourage more Canadians to get vaccinated who might be hesitant to do that right now. But I got to tell you, it starts to break down when you think about the practicalities of it. In most provinces, you've been given a little slip of paper, maybe a link to a website that you can print something off to show your vaccine status. Most people have said that, that could be easily doctored in about 30 seconds.
Yeah.
And on a practical level, that hostess at the Earls, obviously not a small business, but the bicycle repair shop, requiring them to investigate and check whether their employees are fully vaccinated, and then even more challenging to do that for your customers. That's where I think this starts to break down, and I'm just not sure it's a particularly workable idea, let alone the concerns about privacy, human rights, and everything else that comes along with it.
From the CFIB perspective, Dan, what might work? Is there a middle ground to be found here on how we can sort of create a space where the concerns of people like Anita Huberman are addressed?
Look, there's lots we can do, and it is good news that governments are starting to think about this. The Quebec government has indicated that rather than using blanket lockdowns, it might require employers in some non-essential industries to check vaccine credentials before they admit them, rather than locking them down. But, there are other, as you said, there are other approaches that can be taken. One of them is, of course, to encourage as many Canadians to be vaccinated as possible. It is great news, and I think just today, we have now surpassed the UK in total number of. We are the most vaccinated major country in the world right now, and I think most employers are on board to encourage staff to get vaccinated. In fact, 77% of our members said that they would do that. Rapid testing can be used in a bigger way to ensure that, look, if there's an area or region that is getting hit with that uptick in COVID cases or hospitalizations, rapid tests can be employed in more settings, both in homes and in schools and in businesses, to ensure that COVID is kept at bay. These are some of the measures that I think are a little bit more doable and obviously have fewer potentially negative side effects. People don't like to be forced to do something, and the businesses that have tried this have experimented in say Ontario and in other parts of Canada, and said, you know what, all my staff and all my customers will be fully vaccinated. They faced a backlash from those that have concerns about vaccines, or some, what are you going to do about those people that can't be vaccinated because of health or religious reasons? You have a duty as an employer to accommodate that for workers. You also have a duty as an employer, as a business, to try to accommodate your customers who have those kinds of restrictions. So there's a lot to think about here, and that's one of the. Look, my advice to business owners is don't do it. Look at the healthcare system. No province, to my understanding, has mandated that all workers in hospitals have to be vaccinated. All visitors to hospitals have to be fully vaccinated. Until governments are prepared to do that for the healthcare system, I'm just not sure if I'm running the bicycle repair shop or the local coffee shop that it's a great idea to go down that road ahead of government.
Could there be something to the idea, Dan, that perhaps sort of dangling a mandate such as a vaccine passport or proof of immunization is a way to get the uptake that has been seen, certainly with significant pushback in France when President Macron said, that's it. If you want to go to the coffee shop, if you want to go to the restaurant, if you want to go to the nightclub, you must prove that you are vaccinated. And I think today the number is something like 1.6 million people booked vaccine appointments in France. Like, it really did motivate those who were either hesitant or lazy, because there were people that said in France, people were just like, no, we're over it, whatever. And those people now are like, okay, if it's going to significantly, uproot my day to day, I'm just going to go do this. It's obviously not going to get the anti-vaxxer to the vaccine clinic, but it might move the meter on another percentage of society. Maybe there's some tactic there as opposed to all the way implementing it. I don't know. I'm just floating this.
Sure. Well, look, I hear you, but is that really where we should be heading as a nation, to kind of threaten people to
Probably
do something
not.
or take away their freedoms? It just look, we saw that during lockdowns. I'm calling you from a province that has had the world's longest lockdown. Indoor dining in Toronto was locked down for more than 400 days. When we talked to
we didn't lock down here at all, so it's a little odd to hear lockdowns in BC, because we were super free here comparatively, and we're doing pretty good.
Yes.
Yeah.
BC did a way better job of keeping its economy open than Ontario did. But when we talked to Ontario officials about why they locked businesses down for so long, one of the messages they shared was it wasn't that they were so concerned about the spread in these individual businesses. It was to send a message to the public that they had to take COVID seriously. But I worry about using business owners as kind of props to try to motivate the public to do something. That's just not where we should be heading as a country. Look, there's nothing wrong with promoting vaccinations. Employers are on board for that. Rapid testing, lots of room, I think, to grow that. But mandating vaccinations for employees, mandating them for customers, we have some major reservations. And until governments are prepared to do that in the healthcare settings and in areas of the public service, I would, as a business owner, suggest that you follow their lead. You may not know if you're motivated to do this just as, to try to be a good corporate citizen, to try to protect your staff, your customers. You may not be aware that you would potentially face a giant lawsuit for violating your employees' privacy if you start to share that all your employees are vaccinated without their express consent. You might be violating a customer's human rights if you require them to be vaccinated before you serve them. So these are questions that have not been put before courts yet. And as a business owner, you don't want to be bankrupted as you're just trying to recover, and all of a sudden you face some expensive lawsuit. I don't know. I don't think this has been thought through by the advocates of vaccine passports.
Really appreciate your food for thought here, Dan. Lots to think about and talk through. I appreciate your time as always. Great to chat with you.
Anytime.
That's Dan Kelly, the president of the Canadian Federation of Independent Business.